Hi, this is Nancy Love with a micropiece tutorial for the Planet Peace Project. I made several videos within the last couple of years, some of which I put as live videos on Facebook, and they're now difficult to find, but a few of them were very, very helpful and meaningful to people. And I would like to reiterate the types of things that I said in those videos that make them more easy to find on my YouTube channel. This, as always, is the heart I wear to remind me of my cats. Um, when I was a kid, I tended to score really high on standard tests of IQ, achievement, and aptitude. And in the sixth grade, uh, I got my scores back from an IQ test, but outside in the hallway. The teacher had called me up before she started handing out the test scores. She would give people pieces of paper to take home to their parents. And she said, "Don't say anything. When I ask if anybody didn't get theirs at the end, if I've missed anybody, don't raise your hands. Just meet me in the hallway." Okay. The whole time she was handing out these papers to about 32 other kids, I was getting worried and thought, since I always do pretty well and she knows I'm really sensitive, maybe I didn't do well and she's going to, she doesn't want to embarrass me and is going to hand me my bad scores in the hallway. Well, it turned out nothing could be further from the truth. She and the math teacher, who was kind of mean to girls, but was never mean to me after that day, he showed up and started paying attention to girls in math class and started helping us more instead of just dismissing us. Um, she handed me the test scores. I opened them and he said, "You outscored Albert Einstein by about 20 points." And I just blew down the hallway. I literally they were standing there and I just like went 12 feet down the hall. And I said, "You've just told me I've reached further than my goal. My goal was to be Albert Einstein, and you just told a kid that I've surpassed my goal. Now what? You shouldn't do that." And they were laughing, and I said some other things like, "How could I be that smart? I'm not Jewish," because all the people that I knew of who had extremely high IQs were Jewish. So let that be a compliment to you if you're a Jew. But on the way home, this is where it gets really whack. On the way home, kids I'd known since we were 5 and 6 years old together. I had the good fortune of growing up with the same group of kids from preschool to high school. These were my very best friends. And a bunch of us were walking home together. But one of my dearest friends, I'd known him since I was 6 and he was 5, pushed me and grabbed my paper from my hand and started saying, "Ooh, you're so whoop-de-doo. What does this mean? You're better than the rest of us?" And I felt the whole group, there were about 8 kids in a circle, I felt the whole group act sort of like a mass mind or a unit. They just all seemed so predatory all of a sudden instead of like my very best friends. And I started crying. I was shocked that this wonderful boy that I'd known forever would push me, hurt me, almost push me down, grab my paper and start making fun of me. And he said, "Oh, you're such a genius, yada yada." I said, "You don't understand. You don't understand anything. Every single one of you is a genius too. And I started talking to him. I said, "You're so politically astute. I swear you're going to be the mayor or the governor or the president or something. You know more about politics than practically anyone." And then I said to someone else, growing up with you is like growing up with Steve Martin. You're the funniest person, even in the most serious situations. You're cracking everybody up. You're making everybody laugh. It's a joy to be around you." Then I said to this other guy who was an incredibly good animator, I said, "You draw like Stan Lee. You draw Charlie Brown and Woody Woodpecker just like a grown-up person who's making money doing that. I'm sure you're going to be involved in cartooning when you're an adult. And then I said to my best female friend, who we've been to, closest friends since we were in second grade, I said, "You're the female version of the best comedian. You're like, Lucille Ball or something. You're just so hilarious all the time. And I'm real serious, fuddy-duddy, nerdy, stick in the mud, and you're always making me laugh and open up and be more extroverted. And I appreciate that about you." I just went around to each of these kids. Peggy was the best speller. Teresa liked math. I mean, what little girl in sixth grade back then liked math? It was almost unheard of. Um, I just went around to each of these children and pointed out how I personally considered them a genius. And then I got to the last person in the semicircle, and people laughed. And I sort of paused, and the person that I was looking at put his head down, and he kind of shuffled his feet in the dirt, and he said, "Guess you can't find anything genius about me, huh?" Because his IQ was around 70, and he had been labeled early in childhood as borderline retarded. He probably had dyslexia and just couldn't read that well, but he was a very, very sweet person. And I said, "Oh, yes, I can. James, you're the smartest of all of us put together. Put all my genius and all the genius of all these other types of people. You got the most important kind of genius there is." And his eyes grew wide, and he went, "Why, what kind of genius do I have?" And everyone was waiting with bated breath, looking at him in awe. I said, "You're a genius of love. You are the kindest, most nurturing boy I have ever known. You are always patting people on the back and trying to lift their chin and square their shoulders and dry their tears. Do you remember how in first grade a couple of these ruffians here were duking it out on the playground, and you just walked right between them because you knew that although they were temporarily stupid enough to hit each other, both of them loved you and neither of them would hit you?" He said, "Yeah. Got in trouble for that, but yeah, I remember. And then you did it, right?" And I said, "Yeah, in third grade when Carl and Norman were poking each other in the face. I took a page out of your book. I read, how did James deal with something like this?" And I just walked right between them, and all of a sudden there was a fist here and a fist here, but nobody, they stayed their hands. They didn't hit me because I knew that although they loved each other and they were best friends and they were temporarily whack stupid enough to hurt each other and hit each other, bloody each other's faces, neither of them would hurt me. So let that be a lesson to you. If you want to mediate between two warring tribes, if they love you, they will listen to you, and they will try not to hurt you and build a bridge of peace between each other. I said, "James, I learned that from you." And I just kept calling him a genius of love. Well, the guy who pushed me down and grabbed my paper said, "I give up. You win." We're all geniuses. We're smart enough to love you, Nancy. And we're smart enough to see the genius in James, who's not retarded after all, now is he? And we all gathered round in a group hug. We all hugged each other, and then they stuck me in the middle. They pushed me in the middle instead of castigating me and making me the outcast because of my IQ scores. All of a sudden, since I was smart enough to see the genius in each of them, I was surrounded by these young geniuses and was the center of this massive group hug that I will never forget and always remember. Well, when we parted, I did ask Carl why he'd done that. And he said that he had heard that the military, the federal government, was offering to pay my way to a boarding school, a science magnet school in Dallas, and I would be gone 9 months out of the year. And he said he was afraid that my IQ scores would mean that I was going to be taken from them and I wouldn't be their close friend, and they wouldn't have me to be in their lives every day as a nurturing source of young wisdom and philosophy that I was. And so it was a very, very healing experience in every way, but initially very painful. Because I didn't expect my friends to turn on me just because I was smart. They knew I was smart, but what they needed to realize was how smart each and every one of those people was. And I think what all of us really, really, really needed to face is the single most important type of genius is that which comes not from book learning or IQ scores. It's the kind of genius that comes from love. It's the kind of genius that comes from compassion and wisdom and love. Fancy love. More macro peace later.